समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या? समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Following his high-profile visits to the United States, General Asim Munir has finally returned to Pakistan, determined to craft a strategy which not only deters arch rival India, but gives his army a role in the Middle East and beyond. This week, ThePrint first revealed Pakistan was planning to make arms sales to the internationally sanctioned junta that rules Sudan. The United States hopes Pakistan will prove even more broadly useful as a partner in fighting terrorist groups from Afghanistan to Yemen and upholding order in the Persian Gulf. The truth is, though, that Field Marshal Munir's grand vision is drowning in a sea of insurgencies he's showing no ability to address. The night was cold, eyewitnesses would later remember, when the men arrived at the home of the Pashto language folk dancer Shabana in Mingora, a city in Swat. They hammered on the door until she came out. The men ignored her mother's promises that she would never allow her to sing and dance again. They dragged her towards the green square. There, her body was found the next morning, her throat slit from end to end and body riddled with bullets, covered over with a shroud of banknotes and her music CDs. For months, the killings continued. Scholars John Braithwaite and Bina da Costa have recorded. Afsana, who sang at wedding ceremonies to support her refugee family, was murdered in 2010. Ghazala Javed, another popular 24-year-old Pashto singer, was murdered in Peshawar in the summer of 2012. Through the past week, residents of Pakistan's Bajaur, the northernmost and smallest of the 7 territories, which used to be called the federally administered tribal areas, had been negotiating to end the resurgence of violence in their area. Following the takeover of the region in 2008 by jihadists of the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, the army stepped in with a savage campaign that claimed the lives of thousands of people and forced some 300,000 people into refugee camps. After days of talks, though, last week, the Tehreek-e-Taliban refused to pull back into Afghanistan, and helicopter gunships, artillery, and drones again began hitting insurgent targets. Large numbers of people are back in refugee camps. The jihadists who used terror to stamp out the region's unique syncretic culture now hold real power and have no intention of giving up their Sharia-ruled mini-emirates without a fight. The question is, as Field Marshal Asim Munir offers the West the partnership of the Pakistani military to fight distant battles against the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda, can he still engage with what's been described as Pakistan's own Vietnam? Looking back, the peace agreements the Pakistan army signed with jihadists from 2008 were fated to fail. The agreements were, journalist Daud Khatak has noted, signed between the military and the jihadists, excluding the traditional tribal leadership and the community. The TTP's ranks were swelled by a new generation of prospect-less youth, their guns an instrument to seize lands, extort money from businesses. Each of these emirates of mud ran on revenues it could seize through terror, with the Tehreek-e-Taliban setting itself up as the guardian of this mini-state or mini-anarchy. From the outset, the TTP also stamped its cultural authority on the region, marginalizing the state and traditional communities. Girls' schools were dynamited. Even boys' schools were soon also leveled, as well as 2 colleges. The tenuous gains Bajaur residents had made over decades were wiped out in less than 6 months. The TTP then moved rapidly to cash in on the spoils. Extortion replaced the normal tax structure. Among the key elements of Operation Sher Dil, launched by the army in 2008, was to separate the jihadis from their sources of income in the local economy. The plan worked. Braithwaite and Da Costa show. That is, worked disastrously well. Egg and poultry farming in Bajaur, a big source of income, collapsed, with livestock being left for the stray dogs as owners fled. Thousands of shops in Anayat Kali were burned down in artillery exchanges as fighting between the military and the TTP escalated. Fruit orchards, which grew oranges, plums, peaches, apricots, and persimmons, simply had to be abandoned. The marble business, another big important source of livelihood in the region, collapsed altogether. There was neither labor nor artisan available. The TTP did eventually retreat into Afghanistan, only to return after the Islamic Emirate took power in Kabul in 2021. This time, Pakistan's ISI hoped the Islamic Emirate would rein in the TTP. It turned out that the Taliban either couldn't or wouldn't keep Pakistani jihadists. The cycle of violence erupted yet again. Local negotiators who struggled to persuade both the TTP and the army to leave the areas alone were ignored by both sides. The initiation of military operations since then has sparked off yet another refugee exodus. Little evidence exists that the strains between the military and the population are being contained by politicians or leaders. Last month, soldiers opened fire on unarmed protesters who had gathered at a military camp to voice anger over the killing of a 7-year-old girl in a mortar strike. Local soldiers responded by killing 7 protesters. Leaked video of the incident established beyond doubt. Like so many insurgencies in India and its neighborhood, the jihadist rise in Bajaur was facilitated by the state itself. Following the march to war over Kashmir in 1947, tribals from the region were recruited to fight against Maharaja Hari Singh's forces. The military, civilian authorities, as well as religious scholars, all supported the effort. Scholar Hussain Haqqani has noted. These groups were also supported by the government of Prime Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, who saw Islamists as a tool to undermine President Muhammad Daoud Khan's left-leaning government in Afghanistan, which was insisting on asserting border claims Pakistan didn't like. This process, the scholar Hussain Asaf thoughtfully noted in 1979, marked the emergence of, and I quote, a dialectical relationship between Islam, Pakistan, and the military. Without Islam, Pakistan would not have been able to come into existence. Without Pakistan, the military would not be able to exist. And without the military, Islam and Pakistan would be threatened. A neat little circle. In perpetuating such a state, the military was perpetuating Islam. The policy, we know, had many unintended bitter consequences. A new class of conflict entrepreneur emerged in what was then known as the Northwest Frontier Province, today Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, equipped with the latest Western arms and generously funded by Saudi Arabia and the Central Intelligence Agency through the Inter-Services Intelligence. This new class of political leader swept aside all semblance of respect for traditional tribal hierarchy. From 1979, as refugees flowed into Bajaur to escape the Soviet intervention, the ISI set to work recruiting fighters from the camps. Later, in 1989, the leaders of 7 Islamist parties met at Maidan district in Lower Dir and formed the Tehreek-e-Nifaz-e-Shariat Muhammadi, an organization for the defense of the Prophet's law or Sharia law. Sufi Muhammad of the Jamaat-e-Islami was appointed head of the new coalition. This coalition, scholars Kiramatullah, Muhammad Ayaz Khan and Tariq Anwar Khan write, marked the end of the traditional chiefdoms of Khar, Nawagai and Pashat. It also choked the activities of pan-Pakistan political parties. Instead, the jihadist campaign in Afghanistan became the axis of politics in Bajaur. The killings of local residents in airstrikes, as well as General Pervez Musharraf's turn against the jihadists at a later stage, led to a state of unrestrained warfare against the state. Fakir Muhammad, the most prominent of these jihadist leaders, took control of the movement in 2008. A military operation forced him out, if at great cost to civilians, but the TTP was very soon back again, staking claim to control of its little empire. Ever since then, new democratic movements have sprung up across the region from time to time, seeking an end to the use of death squads, extrajudicial executions, and massive force by the military. These movements believe there's a better way forward. Khyber Pakhtunkhwa saw the rise of the Pashtun Tahaffuz movement, which sought greater democratic rights and freedoms within the framework of the Constitution of Pakistan. The military crushed it though, fearing that if one bunch of democratic movements could succeed, they might undermine the jihadist proxies Pakistan had spent so much time nurturing and hoped would actually rule the region. For Pakistani military commanders, moreover, the jihadist allies were still partners, badly behaved partners maybe, partners who might need a little coercion and a taste of the stick to be disciplined, as the British had done in the colonial period, but allies nonetheless. The first 30 years of British rule in the Northwest, historian Elizabeth Kolsky records, saw more than 40 punitive expeditions in which crops were destroyed, livestock was slaughtered, and entire villages were burned to the ground and depopulated. This is a strategy Pakistan is also pursuing today on other violence-torn borderlands. The government has succeeded in having the Majid Brigade, the most aggressive of the many insurgent groups fighting under the Baloch Liberation Army flag, designated a terrorist group by Washington. But that really hasn't changed reality very much. Fierce fighting has continued to be reported against Baloch groups operating from across the border in Iran's Zob. The Pakistan Army recently claimed it had shot dead 50 BLA personnel in ongoing operations, while 9 of its personnel fell in combat. Lacking political legitimacy and a genuine political constituency, Field Marshal Munir is fated to fail in this long insurgency, just like his predecessors did. To contain insurgencies in 2009-2010, Zahid Ali Khan estimated that Pakistan committed some 140,000 Army and Frontier Corps personnel. Those numbers just are not sustainable if Field Marshal Asim Munir also has ambitions to emerge as the guardian of the Middle East regional order. Finding a way forward needs the Pakistan Army to demonstrate not just tactical skills, but also an understanding of political will and the kinds of ties that are needed to make meaningful alliances with representatives of the burning borderlands. There's little in the Pakistan Army's history, though, that suggests it has either the imagination for such an enterprise or the skill to pull it off. I'm Praveen Swami, and I'm a contributing editor to ThePrint. Thank you for watching this episode of Security Code.